to break this down because you got the Marlins and the Twins matching up on a deal that Peter and I broke down in one episode. I think Jack and I have broke it down in another. Like, we've talked about this exact trade on the Just Baseball show. Like, it's stamped by the JB show for months now, which, I don't think we thought that, or at least I didn't think, and we'll talk about that a little bit, that the Marlins would have to put prospects on top until more recent reports started to come out that the Twins weren't that eager to trade Arraez. It was going to have to really, really make sense for them. And the Marlins were kind of cornered. Full breakdown is Luis Arraez comes over to the Marlins. Marlins send over Pablo Lopez plus infield prospect Jose Salas plus outfield prospect 17-year-old Byron Chorio, who I admittedly have barely ever heard of, like only seen his name, don't even know what he looks like. He's very, very, very young lottery ticket, but did put up good numbers in the DSL for what that's worth. I'll start with Peter and then we'll go to Jack. Peter, we talked about it a little bit, but obviously it wasn't on air and on the podcast. Let's kind of unpack a little bit of what your thoughts were, because I know I gave you a little bit of the context from like the Marlins perspective and just some of the things that I heard in terms of like what was going on with them in terms of negotiation. But in a vacuum, it's kind of an overpay. And I feel like that's kind of where you stand on this.
Yeah, I do feel like it's overpay. I gave the Twins an A grade and I gave the Marlins a B minus. And the only reason I gave them a B minus instead of like a C plus or a C is you can't debate that they're trading from a strength. And the Marlins, they're not the best team in the world, but what they do have is a surplus of starting pitching. I mean, you could go down the line and there's even some guys who might be their 6th or 7th starter, guys in the minor leagues who could come up and compete and be a solid starting pitcher. Like, for example, Braxton Garrett, who we saw last year. He was a good lefty, and like you put him in the rotation now. Dax Fulton is rising up ranks, Jake Eater, you got Yuri Perez, the alien, and that's just in the minor leagues. That doesn't even count all of the guys that are currently in the big league rotation. But the reality is, you and I were speaking on December 14th. You and Jack were speaking, and the deal that you requested for Pablo Lopez is vastly different.
Yep.
It was Pablo Lopez for Luis Arraez in pieces, but now it's Pablo Lopez in pieces for Luis Arraez. So it's kind of self-inflicted. You put it perfectly. It's self-inflicted by the Marlins, where they waited this long. They knew they were going to trade Pablo Lopez. The writing was on the wall when they got Johnny Cueto. So they backed themselves into a corner and said, please, anyone give us a deal. And the Twins pounced. And that's why the Twins did so well. You're trading the batting champ, but that was his best year by far. This is a guy who's had WAR numbers in the 1.6s range. Last year, 3.2. I believe in it moving forward. I'm not saying that he won't be that hitter moving forward, but what we've seen so far, that was a career year. And Pablo Lopez, his WAR numbers have been what around Luis Arraez did last year. So the Marlins got the bat, which is important. Jack, you had a great tweet. We got batting.
Jesus.
Right, Jack? I mean, that was my takeaway. The Marlins did fine. The Twins did awesome.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the Cardinals the Marlins, sorry. It feels like the Marlins...
I can see why you can confuse the two very successful and well-run
top-flight organizations. Yeah,
yes,
it feels like the Marlins try to cut a lot of corners on the field. I guess they're also trying to cut some corners in the social media department because they hired somebody that doesn't really know baseball to tweet, you guys said you wanted batting. We got it. Are you kidding me?
Everyone's been clamoring for batting. Yeah.
I don't think so. Just a couple things to add here. Byron Chorio was born in 2005. I remember shit that happened in 2005.
Yeah, I know. We were at that stage. What do you mean? That's when the White Sox won the World Series, dude.
Yeah, I know. Also, you said that you've never seen Chorio's face. According to MILB.com, this is Byron Chorio's face. So it is just one of those gray generic baseball players. And when you search Byron Chorio and go to Google Images, the first 5 images are of Luis Arraez.
I thought it was going to be Jackson Chorio. Even worse. It's Luis Arraez.
I mean, I texted it to you guys yesterday. Like, it's just so weird that Pablo Lopez got traded and the Marlins gave up more to move him. Yes. Like, shouldn't you get multiple pieces for the proven 26-year-old starter with 2 years of control here? But they move for a guy that's going to hit 320, 320, 320, and you still gave up one of your better middle infield prospects and a guy without a headshot. So, I mean, it was just a weird move to me. And I'm not saying that anybody lost, because the Marlins absolutely traded from a surplus and they filled a gap that they needed. But now, like, Arraez playing second base and Jazz moving to center is
that's part of the reason why. So I was on the fence about asking you guys to record a pod. And then the second I saw Craig Mish tweet, Kim Ang says Jazz is going to play center, which I was just expecting a presser on Arraez, talk about where Arraez is going to play and, you know, give Pablo his well wishes. No, Kim wanted to get it all out in one presser. Not only are we playing Arraez at second, Jazz is going to center field. So that's something we'll get to in a second, because that's a crazy other aspect of this. But yeah, I do want to talk about, like, just, and I wrote a whole piece up on this trade. I'll link it in the podcast description, from both teams' perspective, for the Twins and for the Marlins. Real quick on the Twins, you know, I think Pablo Lopez, because of the second half that he had, which was a little bit rough, which I really do think that the trade talks for so long, he literally thought he was going to be traded at the last moment of the deadline. I really think that took a bit of a toll on him overall. You know, really proved that he could log the innings. 180 last year was great. He was among the top 30 starting pitchers in baseball in F4. And even with the blow up starts in the second half, which was just a couple of them, the Mets really kind of got the best of him more than anybody else. Still put together a sub-4 ERA, still puts together good strikeout to walk ratio. Like, this guy's going to guaranteed give you high to mid threes and give you 6-7 innings very, very, very frequently. And that's what the Twins need, right? The one thing is they don't have an ace. If you're not going to have an ace, at least have a bunch of 3 types, right? And Sonny Gray is capable of being high-end 3. Tyler Mahle, same thing. Pablo Lopez, same thing. They get Maeda back. We talked about Joe Ryan, who had a really good rookie season, could make that leap as well. And I want to just put something in perspective here. You know, people are like, oh, we kind of know what Pablo is. Pablo and Joe Ryan are the same age. So, like, Pablo could still get a lot better, right? Yeah. This is a guy that could continue to improve. I think with the Marlins, the writing was on the wall. He was their least controllable arm. Move him. But for the Twins, they now get a guy with 2 years of control, and they'll probably be able to extend. And I think this makes the rotation a lot better. Where do you guys stand on this rotation for the Twins now, before I, you know, wrap a bow on the Marlins side of it too?
So I said that Pablo Lopez is the most 40-looking 26-year-old I've ever seen. He looks 15 years older than what he actually is. But I like the move for the Twins a lot, because they're obviously trying to win right now. And they stuck with the Correa saga, right? It was, oh, damn, we lost him to San Fran. Oh, damn, we lost him to New York. But the second they saw that they could pounce again, they did. And talking about cutting corners, they probably cut corners in the physical department. They don't care, because Correa was still like a 5-ish win player for them this past year. So they know he's going to provide really good leadership and really good on-field product when he is on the field. You pair him with Polanco in the middle infield. We've talked about Buxton's volatility, but then we talk about Royce Lewis, right? Royce is expected back. Jose Miranda, they move off Arraez to give Miranda everyday reps.
And Kirilloff.
They go and get Joey Gallo, and who knows what Gallo's going to be, but he's going to be a lot better than he was with the Yankees. I promise you that. What they needed was pitching depth. And on the back end, you've got Yohan Duran, who looks like one of the best closers in baseball to this point, one of the very few that averaged over 100 miles an hour on his fastball. Okay, how do you get to Yohan Duran, right? And your answer was Joe Ryan, and that's kind of it, right? We were talking about Bailey Ober at the start of last year.
He was cooking. He was ready to win me that bet.
Sonny Gray just needs to stay healthy, and he's up there, but he just has to stay healthy, and that's a big if sometimes.
Yeah, and I'll save a little bit more on like the exact breakdown of the rotation, because that's actually going to be one of my questions. But it definitely, this was a rotation that was probably the definition of average, maybe a little bit subpar.
I think where would you
peg it now with the addition of Pablo if it was subpar before? And I think a high end subpar, right? Like more in the 15 to 20 range. Where would you put this rotation now?
So as of right now, it lines up Gray, Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Tyler Mahle, Kenta Maeda. I'd say that's in the 12 to 15 range instead of 15 to 20, which is
that's a big difference.
It's a big difference.
And I would almost say, I'd argue, name me 10 better rotations than that. Like it is probably closer to that range. I would say more 10 to 12. And I think the one thing that we're also forgetting, just to wrap again on the Twins side, is that you guys mentioned it. They are also trading from a strength. So the Marlins are trading from their pitching surplus, but now you get Alex Kirilloff at first base, Jose Miranda at third base, and they have Royce Lewis coming up, not to mention Carlos Correa and Jorge Polanco. So they were just kind of stashing Luis Arraez at first base when it's clear that he can play a bunch of different positions too. So Luis Arraez hitting 316 at his best at first base isn't as valuable to the Twins as it might be playing second base for the Marlins. So while the Marlins traded from a strength of pitching, the Twins did the same and they got pieces.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was such a good deal for the Twins.
Opening day starting lineup for the Minnesota Twins. Christian Vasquez catching, Alex Kirilloff at first. You got Jorge Polanco at second, Correa at short, Miranda at third, Joey Gallo in left, Byron Buxton in center, Max Kepler in right, Nick Gordon is the DH. I think Edouard Julien is there really quickly. That's a lineup that can contend in the AL Central.
And what's crazy is we talk about the strength that they have in the middle infield. It's also organizational, right? Like it goes beyond that. Well, you got guys like Julien in the upper minors. You got Brooks Lee already in Double-A, looking like he's on a fast track to the big leagues. And then Gordon's a guy that plays predominantly middle infield. They put him in center field a little bit more as well. And they added Kyle Farmer even as a depth piece. So they just have so many infielders that, if you can convert one of them into a starting pitcher, this is the way to do it. And I think that's why the Twins asking price was so high, right? At the end of the day, I really think that this trade should always have been a 1-for-1, pretty much don't add anything else. Like if anything, I think the Marlins should have probably got something back. I think a combination of Pablo Lopez's shoulder issues, right? We saw the Frankie Montas trade. And at that time, all of us were like, whoa, that's a little light, right? And now we're looking at it like, man, they might not get what they were hoping out of Montas because of that arm. And at least the A's got some pieces here, especially with Ken Waldichuk. But in a vacuum, we thought that was a light return because shoulder concerns are huge for teams. And Lopez did some good things to hedge that concern with 180 innings last year. But he still missed starts with shoulder discomfort, and he's missed starts with shoulder discomfort every single year. So I think that's something that definitely held the Twins back a little bit. And they were kind of saying, look, we don't want to move Arraez. You got to make us move Arraez. You got to really convince us. And for the Marlins, ultimately, that was trading Jose Salas and Chourio. For me, yes, I'd rather not give up Salas. And in a barren system, you can't really afford to trade one of your top 10 guys. But that being said, if I have an opportunity to upgrade my lineup and I'm a general manager like Kim Ng who wants to prove that she deserves a job beyond this year, I'm not letting Jose Salas stop me from upgrading my lineup, right? And the other thing that I think people really on Twitter, Marlins fans don't totally understand is they're like, oh, they could have got a better deal for Pablo. No, they couldn't have. Maybe in terms of pure value for a prospect return, sure. But the Marlins were never interested in a prospect return. And like I talked about in the piece, there's very few teams why you don't see big leaguer for big leaguer trades. It's so rare. That's why the Yankees trade of Montgomery and Bader was super rare. And that was floated reportedly for Pablo as well. Like I feel like it's really hard to find the big leaguer for big leaguer trade. You had a lot of teams that were willing to offer the Marlins prospects, but they don't want to subtract from their big league team for a pitcher with 2 years of control because they're in win now mode. The Twins were that rare surplus for surplus match. And they kind of knew that. And like you talked about in the beginning, Peter, they knew that they had the Marlins backed into a corner. They squeezed a couple prospects out of them. I think that's really it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why aren't the Marlins looking for prospects? Does Luis Arraez make them compete today? Because it's a funny question, but like it's the reality of the situation.
I'd be looking
for
Arraez
in the lineup. Like,
but on the flip side, I thought about that because I would be looking for prospects. But you've got 3 years of Arraez, and you can maybe extend him. That's going to be better than any prospect you're gonna have coming up anytime soon. They have no reinforcement
too.
Coming,
it's not like you just got a 31-year-old first baseman.
Correct. He's 25.
25. Yeah, I get that.
So I think for them, they're like, we have had no luck with hitting prospects. Let's get a guy that we know can already hit at the big league level. And if we extend him for 2 more years beyond the 3, that's 5 years of control, just like he was a rookie, just like he was a prospect. So that's the thing too. They better extend him. But I see fans upset about Salas. I see Fangraph super high on him. I watched him a lot in the fall league. He could be a very good player. He's 19 years old and an 88 WRC plus in high A with really low exit velos, and is probably going to move off a shortstop. Still a nice prospect, not losing sleep over that.
Can I code what Arm just said? Marlins fans, he's being very nice about Jose Salas. He's being very nice about him. Let's be real. All right, Jack.
You said that the Marlins got a guy who they know can hit. I think the Marlins got a guy who they know can bat. Last thing on both sides. I'm sorry. Last thing on both sides. We didn't mention that the Twins may have one of the better sixes in baseball. Aram, you and I are both really high on Simeon Woods Richardson.
Yeah.
Like if one of those five goes down, that is the best depth piece in a farm, maybe in baseball right now, aside from the top prospects, just because he is like floor is 5, ceiling is 3. He's 90 to 92 with an elite changeup. He's really fun. So Simeon Woods Richardson could be the guy. For the Marlins, I'm glad they moved Pablo and not Rogers or Edward Cabrera, because personally, Pablo was the one that should have gone. He was, almost like phased out, right? And yes, he was the second most successful pitcher for the Marlins last year, you could argue. I mean, Edward was better, but way more limited sample size. But you can dream on so much more with Edward Cabrera.
And he's the least controllable arm. So, going back to answering Peter's question, at least they traded the arm with the least control to try to focus on the future. Now the whole rotation is under control for 4+ years. So yes, that's the good news there.
Sounds like the Marlins did really well here, Arm.
Yeah. Okay. They did okay. But you know what? It makes them way more watchable offensively. Oh, last thing, Jazz Chisholm in center. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah. So I saw, I even posted something where, they already moved Jazz from short to second. And then with a couple of months left in the offseason, they're saying, not only do you have to learn, you don't have to learn an infield position, you have to go play center field. And, he's an athletic guy. I saw a lot of people under the thread saying, he can handle it. I saw Jazz come out and say, I think it was who did he say this to? Where he says,
I think Mish tweeted it. Mish tweeted that
win a gold
something
glove
along the lines that, like, Kim mentioned that center field was a possibility. He said, if you need me to play center, I'll go win a gold glove, which is Jazz's attitude. That's the way
of course. And he's athletic. Like I'm not saying that he can't do it, but it's almost like saying, let's get any athletic shortstop, let's get any athletic infielder and just put them in center.
That's how
Royce Lewis in hindsight, it sounds good. Like they should be able to be okay out there because they are freak athletes, but it's not a good plan for a guy who's been banged up his whole career so far.
That's the thing, is they move him from shortstop to second base citing injury concerns. And then you move him to center, which is a way bigger liability and toll on your body. To me, it makes me feel like the injury concerns were kind of just a crutch. And they were really just didn't like him defensively at short, to be honest, because he was pretty brutal there. He played second base last year for 60 games and got knee surgery and had a fractured back. Like at the end of the day, I don't know if you can really shelter him from injury. So I'm okay with rolling the dice, but let's call it what it is. They think that Jazz Chisholm is better for them in center field than shortstop. And I think that says a lot about how they feel about his shortstop defense. I'm interested to see him try. I'm glad he's on board for it. Hopefully he can stay healthy. I'm concerned because you see a Royce Lewis out there last year after, obviously not being able to play short because of Correa. Lewis, I've watched this play recently because I made a thread for him. I didn't put this play in there because I didn't want to put him getting injured in the thread, but he made a phenomenal catch in center. You're not used to jumping up against a wall and landing. He landed funny and his knee buckled and he tore his ACL. Like, Jazz is going to be reckless. He's going to be diving all over the place. That's the way he plays baseball. That's why we love him. But it's a lot scarier with having reckless abandonment in center field than second base. And that's my biggest concern. We're talking about a player that the Marlins have been trying to tell to tone it down and conserve his body. And now you're throwing him in center field. I'm okay with the Marlins saying kind of, it's like fuck it ball, really. It's just like, let's see what happens. But this is your best player who struggles to stay on the field, and it just reeks of desperation to me. That said, it's going to be fun to watch.
Jack, that's a good quote. Fuck it ball.
That was kind of hot, like how casual he dropped the F-bomb.
And look how good Arm is at being so angry, but professionally laying it out and almost making me like the deal for the Marlins.
Yeah, no, I still hate the deal.
This is what years of hosting a Marlins podcast by yourself will do. You got to find a way to communicate it. to the people that still care.
If this happened for the Yankees, I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs, haven't prepared anything, it'd be all emotional, and I'd probably be saying and like and just a bunch of filler words because I wouldn't know how to put it into words. But you're doing a great job. The Marlins won the deal. I'm confident in that now. Yeah, good job.
Hey, speaking of hosting a Marlins podcast by himself, we are all huge fans of Peter Pratt.
Goat.
I would love to get Pratt on the pod just to.
We can do that.
Okay, I want to talk to Pratt like that.
Absolute
guy.
scenes.
Okay, absolute scenes. I'm all in.
He just shared my article. It was very nice. Perfect. Very nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Pratt on the pod. Peter, can you bet on the Gold Glove?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't think so. Now that I think about it, I've never seen lines for that. No.
Well, if you find some offshore gambling site, I would go to your local bank. I would take out as large a loan as you can, and I would put it on Michael Harris. And of course, it's not
gambling advice.
There we go. Thanks, Peter.
I like how you teed me up for that one.
Via Craig Mish, Jazz Chisholm said, quote, I will go out, play the position, and win a Gold Glove. At Money Mike with 3 Y's and 3 E's, quote tweeted with the eyes emoji. Jazz replied and said, you know what's up. Michael Harris said, let's do it. Michael Harris is going to put together the best defensive season in baseball history. Promise.
He's my favorite player, I think, at this point, Michael Harris is.
He's awesome.
I think one of the funniest things that you've said too, Jack, is I want to just go back to it quickly before we get to Arb's questions, is the 320 slash line.
Which
because
is
I was
so
like
wrong,
always projecting his batting average for the next 3 years, and I realized like it's not that far off from what he's gonna do.
316, 375, 420 last year. 314, 374, 410 on his career. He's getting a little too close to Nick Madrigal.
Yeah, sorry, it's not as funny. It's not as
340, 340, 340. Luis Arraez.
That's fucking gas. That's the crazy part. Would have led all Marlins position players in basically every single statistic. So that's the other thing too.
Hits,
Marlins
210
fans
singles.
Marlins fans complaining about not getting a bat, then they get one of the better bat to ball guys and probably the best bat that they're gonna get on the market.
They got batting, baby. They got
batting.
Marlins got an A in this. What a deal.
What else are you gonna get?